Desmond, I have to know who I am beyond these walls. Then let yourself be seen, Laelani. His intensity ignited the space around them, pushing through the barriers of formality that had held her captive. But before she could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Lady Ambrose, her husband's loyal advisor, strode in with the authority of a storm cloud. Lady Sinclair, you must prepare for tonight's gathering, she declared, her eyes boring into Laelani. Important guests will arrive. Your husband. Enough of this. Please, I can't bear it, Laelani exclaimed, cutting her off. Ambrose's brow arched in disbelief, but Laelani pressed on, brimming with newfound determination. Do you expect me to smile and play the perfect hostess while my heart is in turmoil? Lady Ambrose's gaze flitted to Desmond, momentarily confused, before honing in on Laelani with fierce concern. Your obligations are not what defines me, Laelani shouted, feeling the heat of passion rise in her chest. Do you not understand? I need to reclaim my life, even if it means breaking from. Reclaiming what, Laelani? Her husband's voice thundered from the doorway, the embodiment of authority draped in an impeccably tailored suit, his presence curdling the atmosphere. Reclaiming a life of recklessness? A life that defies the very family that has given you everything. The room stilled, the tension spiraling, palpable enough to grasp. Desmond's hand tightened around hers, grounding her, a lifeline amidst the tempest. No, a life filled with purpose, with authenticity. Laelani turned to the man she had been conditioned to obey, and with love. For a moment, silence ruled, the weight of truth hanging heavily between them. Lady Ambrose exchanged glances with her husband, aware that this was no ordinary quarrel. Desmond leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. Then let it begin, he whispered, igniting a spark in her resolve as she confronted the storm ahead. As another shard of sunlight broke through, Laelani realized that she stood at the precipice, no longer content to be a distant observer in her life. I choose to own my story, she breathed, feeling the first stirrings of liberation. In that moment, even the air around her seemed to whisper, urging her ever forward, into the world where genuine connection awaited, along with the hazardous embrace of a love she could barely name. Scene 75. The final decision. The air was thick with the scent of impending rain, as Laelani Sinclair stood in the grand kitchen of her family's estate, the morning sun struggling against the gathering clouds. She meticulously arranged a vibrant bouquet of wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the muted tones of the polished marble counter. There was something soothing about the process, the gentle clink of glass against ceramic, the fragrant, earthy aroma wafting up to her as she tried to create beauty in a day that felt otherwise void. Behind her, the door swung open, and Desmond Carver stepped inside, his presence shifting the atmosphere with the subtlety of a summer storm. Laelani's heart raced, a familiar but forbidden thrill coursing through her veins. His dark eyes bore into hers with an intensity that made the flowers in her hands momentarily lose focus. "Good morning, Miss Sinclair," he said, his voice low and steady, a balm against the turmoil swirling inside her. "Good morning, Desmond," Laelani replied, forcing herself to sound composed. "I hope you don't mind the chaos." She motioned to the disarray of crumpled tissue paper and empty vases strewn across the marble counter. "Chaos has its charm, don't you think?" Desmond stepped closer, inspecting the bright petals with a critical eye. "There's beauty in the unfinished, in the wild." A mischievous smile tugged at her lips as the rain began tapping softly against the tall kitchen windows, mimicking the steady beat of her heart. "You speak as if you know something of beauty." "Perhaps I do, when it's not obscured by the weight of duty," he countered, locking her gaze. Laelani swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. Duty weighed heavily on her these days, especially with thoughts of her husband lingering like a spectre, reminding her of the shackles she wore beneath her opulent dress. Just outside the kitchen, the muffled laughter of the staff carried through, their light-hearted banter momentarily lifting the gloom. Curiosity pulled Laelani toward the doorway, but she hesitated, torn between the warmth that enveloped her here and the burden she was meant to embrace. "I need to talk to you," Desmond said, breaking her reverie as he glanced toward the door, where echoes of life beckoned. "About?" Laelani asked, intentionally vague as anxiety began to tighten her chest. "About what lies ahead," he said, and what's already on the table. His eyes flickered with urgency, as if so much hung in the balance beneath his calm facade. Laelani's breath caught. Words hovered between them like raindrops caught in a web, heavy with promise. Are you suggesting we take a course away from this? We can't keep avoiding the truth, he said candidly, stepping closer until she felt the heat radiating from him. Your husband's world grows darker every day, Laelani, and I'm caught in it. You can choose another path. Outside, the laughter grew louder as a group of staff engaged in a light-hearted argument over who would win the little garden race they had concocted. Lavinia, the head cook, was animated as she waved her arms, effectively doubling over with laughter. You'll never beat me, Gerard. My grandkids run circles around you. But all of that sounded distant as Laelani turned back to Desmond, his expression filled with a raw intensity that throbbed between them. What do you mean? Her voice was barely a whisper, weighed down by unspoken fears and desires. It means running, Desmond said softly, and something beyond this, facade. Lavinia and Gerard's argument drifted closer. I'll race you, and I'll give you a head start. You'll still lose. Their laughter intercut Desmond's quiet declaration, emphasizing the stark contrast between life and confinement. Will you take that risk? Desmond asked, pulling her back in with his unwavering gaze. Dare to leave the gilded cage for something real. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating their world in stark relief and illuminating the crucial choice before her. Laelani's heart hammered with the enormity of the moment. Here lay the potential to embrace a life filled with passion, chaos, and authenticity, or to retreat into the shadows of her past, where expectations reigned. As the rumble of thunder rolled in the distance, she knew the path she chose would echo through the corridors of her heart forever. Desmond, she breathed, her resolve hardening, I need to decide who I want to become. Scene 76. Breaking the chains. The opulent room was dimly lit, the gathered clouds outside promising a storm that matched the intensity of the moment. Laelani stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the darkening sky. The air was thick with tension, electric and charged. As she turned to Desmond, whose gaze was locked on her, his brow furrowed with urgency. Desmond, if we don't act now, we may never have the chance again, Laelani said, her voice quivering with a mixture of fear and fervor. Desmond stepped closer, the weight of the decision hanging heavy between them. What do you want to do? We could slip away tonight, or face the consequences of my husband's choices, she interrupted, her eyes narrowing with determination. How much longer can we keep living like this? I refuse to be a pawn in his game. Outside, the first raindrops began to pelt against the window, rhythmic and insistent. Each drop resonated with the pounding of their hearts, mirroring the chaos brewing in their lives. The world beyond shimmered with impending storm. Within, their own storm raged. Can you really stand to lose everything? Desmond asked, his voice low, laced with a mix of fear and admiration. We're talking about leaving behind a life of privilege. You would leave it all. I'd leave it all for a chance to be free, she said sharply, stepping closer again, the air swirling with unspoken feelings. I want more than this gilded cage. What we have is real, Desmond. More real than anything I've ever known. Desmond's breath caught. He reached out, the heat from his fingertips brushing against her arm, igniting something spurring. But I'm not who you think I am. Whatever this is, it could be a trap. Laelani took another step forward, her voice softer now, a whisper against the backdrop of the gathering storm. Tell me, who are you, really? Across the mansion, the staff went about their duties, unaware of the brewing storm of emotions and secrets. In the kitchen, Didier, the cheerful cook, jabbered to Mariah, the housekeeper, about the latest gossip. Did you hear? Lady Laelani hasn't been seen with the Viscount in days, he exclaimed, a flourish in his voice. Something's afoot, I tell you. Mariah, her hands moving deftly as she prepped for the evening meal, rolled her eyes. Gossip again, Didier. You'll get us both in trouble. She's probably just lost in a book or… Ha! More like lost in a new romance, Didier teased, wiping his hands on a towel while motioning dramatically. You mark my words, that butler of hers is trouble. No more so than you, Mariah shot back, a smirk on her face. And let me tell you, the day you stop cooking burnt soufflés is the day I believe anything you say about romance. Fair point, he chuckled, returning to his task, but the concern in his eyes lingered. "Just look out for Our Lady. She deserves all the happiness in the world, especially if that means getting away from—" "Enough!" Mariah interjected with sudden seriousness. "You know that's a dangerous thought." Meanwhile, back in the parlor, the rain began to intensify, drumming against the windows like a chorus of anxious hearts. The wind howled, rattling the glass as if urging Laelani and Desmond to act. "You must understand," Desmond urged, his eyes capturing hers. "If you leave, there's no turning back. We're breaking not just chains but bonds of loyalty." Laelani clasped her hands together, heart racing. "Or we're setting ourselves free," she countered fiercely, a spark of rebellion igniting within her. "My husband's empire is built on deceit and ruthlessness. I didn't choose this life. I was born into it. Then let's choose a different path together." His voice was steady, heavy with promise, yet filled with a hint of desperation, as if he could sense the fragile precipice upon which they stood. "Can we?" she asked, nearly breathless, her gaze lingering on the glint of his eyes, as if seeing the world anew through the mirror of his heart, catching the electrifying flicker of hope. "What if your dark secret is too heavy to bear?" With the thunder rumbling in warning above them, Desmond replied, "Then we carry it together." Their resolve solidified. Whispers of determination trembled in the air. The storm outside a reflection of their turmoil, a force of nature pushing them toward a brink they could no longer ignore. "Together," Laelani echoed, the word hanging in the air heavy, potent, and finally liberating. "It begins now." Scene 77. The storm approaches. The air crackled with tension as Laelani Sinclair stood at the veiled window of her clandestine sanctuary, her fingers brushing over the silken fabric while rain began to pelt against the glass like an anxious child drumming for attention. Each drop whispered an urgency that echoed her restless heart. The scent of impending rain mingled with the fragrant petals of her carefully curated bouquet. But now, the fragrance felt suffocating in its beauty, a reminder of the prison she felt herself trapped within. Desmond Carver, her enigmatic new butler, moved quietly across the room, gathering scattered papers that bore the weight of secrets better left unspoken. He was a study in focus, every motion considered, yet there was an underlying fervor that betrayed the calm he exuded. The ominous sky outside mirrored his own turbulent thoughts. Dark and roiling, the storm promised chaos. "Will it ever feel normal again?" Laelani murmured, half to the window, half to herself. Desmond paused, the papers clutched tightly in his hands. "Normal may have never existed for either of us." He stepped closer, his shoes silent on the polished floor, as if he understood that every sound might shatter the fragile air between them. The weight of his unspoken truths lingered heavily in her chest, drawing them closer, yet threatening to push them apart. In the neighboring room, Lady Jida, Laelani's childhood friend, spoke animatedly to Laelani's pregnant sister, Emmeline. They were embroiled in their own drama, one that seemed trivial in contrast to the brewing storm rattling the house's foundations. "Honestly, I can't believe you're still letting Harrison plan the baby's nursery," Jada jested, her hands fluttering as she gestured. "He probably thinks a circus theme is appropriate." Emmeline chuckled, her laughter bright like a burst of sunlight breaking through clouds. "He merely suggested clowns to brighten the mood. Like I can afford to take that seriously." As their banter floated down the hall, Laelani's heart warmed for a moment, but it was Desmond's eyes that held her captive. His gaze flickered toward the door, listening, then returned to her as if they had been submerged in a world separate from the laughter echoing in the other room. "Your family, they are oblivious," he finally said, voice low and filled with a gravity that made Laelani shiver, "to the storm that brews outside and within these walls." Laelani would have laughed at his dramatic phrasing had it not been for their shared reality. "They wouldn't understand," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, knowing that the consequences of her true feelings would unravel everything they had built. Clenching the papers, Desmond stepped even closer, seemingly determined. The air grew hot between them, charged with an electricity that thrummed beneath the surface of restraint. "You deserve to be free, Laelani, free from the shackles of what they expect of you." "Free to." He halted, searching her features for a sign of encouragement or perhaps a spark of rebellion. The moment stretched taut like the fabric of the storm overhead. Then, as if hushed by their moment, the first rumble of thunder could be heard in the distance, growing louder with each heartbeat. His hand reached out, brushing against hers, a hesitant but deliberate contact that sent a jolt of exhilaration through her veins. She could almost hear his unspoken promise echoing in the recess of her mind, an invitation to step into the tempest with him. "What if we were to leave this place?" Desmond asked, his voice resonating with the urgency of the storm. "Just leave it behind, Laelani. Who would come after us?" She blinked slowly, processing the thought that caused a delightful tremor of fear to course through her. "And face him? He'll stop at nothing to find us." "I would lose everything for you," he stated, the sincerity in his tone slicing through her apprehensions. In that moment, the wind outside reached a crescendo, battering fiercely against the walls. "Everything," Laelani echoed, breathless, sensing a truth forming in the tempest around them. What was another rainstorm when her life was a constant deluge of unfulfilled dreams? "Everything," Desmond reiterated, his voice a low rumble amidst the thunder. "Together, we could make a different sky." Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated his face, capturing the desperation mingled with determination and sending a rush of emotions spiraling through her, fear and thrilling possibility vibrating within her. She locked her gaze with his, each heartbeat echoing between them like war drums heralding a confrontation. Desmond leaned closer, his voice barely more than a breath. "What will it take for you to choose me?" The storm raged on outside, and she knew that they stood at the precipice of something monumental, but the answer still danced just beyond her grasp. Scene 78. New Alliances. Laelani Sinclair stood by the window of her opulent drawing room, staring through the fogged glass at the rain-soaked streets below, her brow furrowing in silent contemplation. The droplets cascaded like tears, a vivid reflection of her internal storm. Her fingers traced the delicate lace of her gown, but the smooth fabric felt stifling against her skin. Desmond Carver's presence was less a ghost haunting her, more a catalyst, sparking something alive within her. "What if we could turn their empire against them?" he'd said earlier, the intensity in his eyes igniting her adventurous spirit. "Manipulate their greed into our favor." A sharp knock at the door shattered her thoughts. Before she could respond, the door swung open to reveal Malik, her husband's right-hand man. In his tailored suit, he carried a weight that belied his casual demeanor. "Lady Sinclair," he greeted, wiping water from his brow, "we need to talk. Your husband—" He paused, scanning the room as if sensing the tension the walls held. "He's not pleased." "Still worse than usual?" Laelani asked, feigning indifference as she turned to face him. Within, her heart raced, reminding her of the precarious line she walked. "Let's just say the balance of power is shifting," Malik replied, his pinched expression all business. "He suspects there's a weakness in his organization, rumors of disloyalty, and he's not taking it lightly." As she contemplated the implications, the door creaked open again and Desmond entered, his dark eyes scanning the tension between her and Malik. "What's going on?" he demanded, urgency coloring his tone. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with, Mr. Carver," Malik replied curtly, dismissing Desmond's presence with a wave of his hand. "On the contrary," Desmond said, stepping closer, "if this involves her husband's empire, then it concerns me." The men locked eyes, an electric spark clashing. Laelani took a step forward, her voice firmer than she felt. "If there's danger, we should discuss it together." Malik crossed his arms, though the challenge in Desmond's stance ruffled him. "I don't know how much trust I can put in you, Desmond. You're still relatively new to this world." Desmond pushed past Malik, his voice steady. "I've proven my loyalty, and I'm not just a butler. I have resources and allies you may not be aware of." "Resources?" Malik questioned skeptically, his brows knitting together, but here a tension broke. An unexpected vulnerability flickered across his face. "What do you think I'm doing?" In that instant, Laelani saw it. Malik, the ever-resourceful aide, was navigating his own treacherous waters. Behind the tough exterior lay a man fearing the fallout of his own alliances, the choking anxiety of maintaining control in instability. "If your loyalties are still with my husband," she stated, "then might I suggest a different approach?" Malik's eyes flared with anger, but he softened at her direct gaze, a reflection of her determination seeping through. "What do you propose?" Laelani turned, including Desmond in her plan, as if he were already one of them. We expose the disloyalty, then harness it to our own advantage. Gather information, who's planning to turn on him? Desmond nodded, sparking with newfound fervor. We can use the chaos to our favor. If we can turn their own against them, it could buy us time to get away. Run? Malik echoed, skepticism lining his voice. What will that achieve? You may escape, but the price. He trailed off, the weight of his concern palpable. Is worth more than any life living in fear, Laelani asserted. In this stifling gilded cage, I'm not merely plotting an escape. I want to dismantle the very prison that binds us. Malik regarded her, curiosity glinting in his dark eyes. The spark of possibility ignited burgeoning trust within him, but simmering underneath was an acknowledgement of the dangerous gamble at play. Then let's make it happen, he said, finally conceding. Together, we can confront this head-on, Desmond affirmed, gazing at her with a dangerous intensity. In the charged silence that followed, Laelani's breath trembled with anticipation. For the first time, hope tinged the edges of her world. The sense of impending danger only heightened their urgency, the warmth of unspoken connection wrapping around them like a shield. Then let's move quickly, Laelani suggested, her voice steady as they stepped from the stultifying opulence of her home into the uncertain shadows waiting beyond. A thrill coursed through her, a deep yearning for liberation growing from the embers of a plan forming between them. I don't want to hide anymore, Desmond's gaze held hers, a promise unfolding in the depths of those dark, intense eyes. Then let's rewrite our story. Scene 79, a dangerous reunion. The air inside Lady Laelani Sinclair's drawing room was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and freshly polished wood. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the elegant lines of the room, yet the gilded opulence felt suffocating. A beautiful cage. Laelani moved mechanically, arranging an arrangement of violets on the polished mahogany table. Each delicate petal required a tender touch that belied her inner turmoil. Her hands trembled slightly, betraying the calm demeanor she sought to project. As she adjusted a rebellious stem, the familiar yet elusive face of her former acquaintances splintered through her reverie. The door swung open, revealing Julianne and Edward, two figures from her past that she had long since relegated to the distant hallways of memory. They stepped into the room like splashes of storm clouds against her carefully painted sky. Lady Laelani, Julianne cooed, a warm but insincere smile spreading across her face as she glided towards the table. I heard the news about your husband's stunning rise in power. Quite the impressive feat, isn't it? Impressive or oppressive depends on your perspective. Laelani replied gently, her voice layered with uncharacteristic restraint. A smooth, underlying irritation hummed through her, a desire to expose their true intentions as they approached her under the guise of social pleasantries. Oh, darling, we understand more than you might think, Edward interjected, his tone light, yet his eyes keen, scanning the room before resting on her. The elite parties we've attended are rife with gossip. One cannot help but hear things. Is that so? Laelani retorted, arching an eyebrow, dropping the carefully arranged violets. They flopped over, spilling into a petaled heap on the table, mirroring her own crumbling composure. What things? The atmosphere shifted. Julianne leaned closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. People are unsettled, you know. They whisper of violence and ambition that blinds those in power. The words coiled around Laelani's chest, squeezing tighter with each syllable. There was a truth lurking beneath the half-hearted charm of her old friends, a suggestion of danger that ignited the primal urge within her to flee, yet she stood rooted. While Julianne continued her tale, Edward's gaze drifted beyond Laelani's shoulder, following the glint of polished glass. Just then, Desmond stepped into the drawing room, the light catching upon his sharp features like a beacon. He paused, his presence commanding yet almost ethereal. Something about him seemed to crack the tension like glass. Suddenly, the room felt more alive. Ah, believe me, we don't want any trouble, Desmond, Edward said, a sudden quirk of his mouth hinting at mockery. We were merely catching up with our dear Laelani. Desmond's dark eyes fixed on Laelani, reading the fissures in her porcelain facade. It seems a heavy topic for a casual visit, he remarked coolly. and the way he anchored his voice both dismissed the threat while inviting her to trust him. "We were discussing recent events in the community," Julianne replied too quickly, her polished exterior cracking just slightly. "Scandals, power plays." Laelani noticed the way Desmond's jaw tightened subtly, a flicker of darkness crossing his features. The truth of his world, the very real dangers that shadowed them, lurked just beneath the surface of their lives. She hated that this conversation forced her to navigate her conflicting emotions, loyalty to her husband versus her longing for the genuine connection she felt with Desmond. "Ed, Julianne," he said, his voice a low rumble, "if you've unwittingly brought mischief to my lady's doorstep, I must insist you take your leave." The friendly banter evaporated, replaced by unspoken tension, as the gravity of Desmond's words hung heavy in the air. The room pulsated with emotions, loyalty, obligation, and a dangerous undercurrent that reflected the secrets they all carried. "Don't stress, Desmond," Edward returned with a smirk, masking his discomfort. "We wouldn't dream of overstaying our welcome. After all, social climbers know when to retreat." As they turned to leave, Laelani's gaze locked with Desmond's, a silent understanding passing between them. The danger circling them was palpable, a dragon hidden within the gilded cage, and for the first time, she could sense the true peril of their bond. An uneasy pause hung in the air, thick as the jasmine fragrance surrounding them, and with a sigh, Laelani whispered fiercely to Desmond under her breath, "What if they know more than they let on?" Desmond's expression hardened, a storm brewing beneath the surface. "Then we must tread with care. For every whispered secret, there's a potential for betrayal." A pulse of heat raced between them, fueling the recognition of feelings that could lead to ruin or freedom. She couldn't predict which. "I need to know." Laelani's voice faded, smothered by uncertainty and fear. The air shimmered with the charge of possibilities, dangerous yet intoxicating, as each of them held the key to their own salvation or destruction. Scene 80. Against the current. As the moonlight spilled into the lavish sitting room, Laelani found herself tracing the familiar contours of the delicate porcelain vase that rested on the mantelpiece. Each twist of her fingers evoked memories of her late grandmother, the woman who had taught her the importance of strength couched in elegance. With a collection of trampled roses left at the bottom of her heart, she couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that weighed her down like an anchor. Her mind drifted to Desmond, the enigmatic man who filled her once tedious life with vibrant, swirling colors. He had been a light in the dark crevices of her soul, igniting a flame that had long been draped in layers of societal expectation. But now, with her husband's increasing suspicion about their exchanges, Laelani felt herself caught in an undertow of conflict. "You're not thinking of him again, are you?" Lady Hester, her friend and confidante, snapped as she swept into the room, her voluminous skirts swirling like the storm brewing within Laelani. The tension was palpable, a fragile thread ready to snap. "No, of course not," Laelani replied, forcing a laugh that felt more like a strained cough. "I was just thinking how well you managed to corner the market on feathered hats." With a roll of her eyes, Lady Hester dismissed the light jest. "Charming as that is, it's not what you need right now. You need to keep vigilant, especially if the rumors about Lord Sinclair are true." Laelani's stomach knotted at the mention of her husband. The whispers floating through their circles hinted at darker dealings, illegal trades, hidden beneath the polished surface of their high society lives. She had always trusted him to be more than just a man who commanded respect. She wanted him to be her partner. But there was only darkness lurking in the corners where she hoped to find light. The door creaked open as Desmond entered, a storm cloud expression etched across his handsome face. He paused, locked in a moment that felt eternal, an unspoken acknowledgement passing like a spark. The world around them faded, their chaotic surroundings dissolving into silence. "Is now a good time for a word?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous, the hint of an edge trembling beneath the surface. "Yes," Laelani said, her heart racing as she stepped toward him, desperate to forge a connection in a world teeming with treachery. "Hester, why don't you?" Desmond started, but Hester cut him off with a flourish of her hand. "I suspect I'll have to find trouble elsewhere. Good luck." She turned with a theatrical sigh, adhering to the cue better suited for a stage than the constraints of their reality. The air thickened as Laelani and Desmond stood inches apart, the unyielding silence amplifying the tension in the luxurious room. "What is it?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling. "I overheard something concerning your husband. It's dangerous, Laelani." Desmond leaned in closer, the warmth of his presence enveloping her, igniting a desire to trust him despite the turmoil currently swirling around them. "What do you mean?" she whispered, searching his dark eyes for undeniable truths amidst the enigma. "Him and the syndicate, they're tangled up in something that could destroy everything we care about. This isn't just about you and me anymore," he warned, the intensity of his gaze penetrating the barriers she had built around her heart. Laelani felt exposed, and everything she had brushed aside flooded back, her longing for freedom, the beat of her heart that quickened whenever he was near. "I know," she replied, inhaling sharply, "but what do we do? Because I can't keep pretending that this, whatever we have, isn't real." "It is real," Desmond murmured, stepping closer, the air heavy with unspoken promises of what could be. "But it's fraught with peril. We must keep our guard up, keep moving against this current." Suddenly, a rush of vulnerability overtook him, a flash of uncertainty beneath the hardened exterior. "I can't lose you, Laelani. I've seen too much pain in this world already." Before she could reply, he bridged the gap and captured her lips with his, the kiss manifesting with an urgency that was as tender as it was fierce. She melted against him, a rush of heat filling the space between their realities. It was an intoxicating escape from their suffocating lives, a promise forged in the fires of risk and possibility. As their lips parted, breathless, the weight of their circumstances slammed back into focus. "I won't let you down," she whispered against his skin, knowing they would face whatever storm lay ahead together. But in the shadows of their embrace, a figure watched, pondering how love could become a weapon as sharp as any knife, ready to cut through the ties that bound them to this life of crime and deception. Scene 81. A light in the shadows. Rain drummed softly against the polished windows of Laelani's drawing room, the low swirling clouds outside giving the impression of an impending storm, a tempest that mirrored her inner turmoil. She stood by the window, the fabric of her gown clinging to her, damp from the humid air, each droplet a reminder of the suffocating grief that weighed heavily upon her heart. For weeks, she had masqueraded through life, plastering on a facade of grace, while feeling trapped in a gilded cage crafted by duty and expectation. A flicker of movement caught her attention. Desmond entered, his presence a commanding contrast to the dismal afternoon. The subtle tension in his stance spoke volumes, the grace of a man who had borne the weight of shadows as he navigated the world of unspoken danger. She turned away from the rain-soaked landscape, her pulse quickening at the sight of him. "I didn't expect to find you here, Desmond," she said, her voice almost a whisper, laced with the pain of longing and uncertainty. He stepped closer, his brow furrowing slightly. "And I didn't expect to see you so lost in thought. The weather seems to reflect your mood." She offered a wry smile, though it faltered under the weight of her truth. "Perhaps the weather understands me better than I do." Desmond moved to her side, the warmth radiating from him dissolving some of the chill that had taken root in her bones. "What troubles you, my lady? You seem—" He paused, searching her eyes. Adrift. As her heart raced, Laelani felt an urge clawing at her, the kind that stirred deep in her chest, igniting a fire she thought had long been extinguished. "What if there's no safe harbor?" she confessed, her voice trembling. "What if I am meant to be swept away?" "Then you must find your own anchor," he said softly, leaning in just enough that she could feel the heat of his breath. It was dangerous, intoxicating. His gaze bore into hers, and she could barely breathe, caught between a longing for freedom and the bonds of her station. "Desmond, if only it were that simple," she replied, the space between them shrinking as if drawn by an unspoken magnetism. A soft rumble of thunder echoed outside, blending with the sound of rain. The room darkened momentarily, the flicker casting vivid shadows across Desmond's face, illuminating his striking features. Laelani's breath hitched as she became acutely aware of the tension, both electric and magnetic, humming between them. "Tell me, Laelani," he said, his voice a low murmur, "is your heart still with him?" The question hung heavy in the air, laden with implications. As if answering without words, Laelani shook her head, the truth twisting like a knife within her. My heart is a prisoner, Desmond. It aches for something I dare not name. He stepped closer, their breaths intertwined in the space that had become tangible with tension. Then let it breathe, he urged, his eyes darkening with a passionate intensity. I cannot promise safety, but I can promise truth. In that moment, the world outside disappeared as Laelani found herself lost in his gaze. She reached out, trembling fingers brushing against his, electricity sparking between them. Desmond exhaled sharply, the breath escaping his lips, a testament to the feelings they both grappled with in silence. And just as quickly as the moment seemed to be slipping away, Laelani closed the distance, her lips finding his with a fervor that tasted of rain and desperation. Desmond responded in kind, his hands finding their way to her waist as the kiss deepened, brushing away the masks they both wore. In the sanctuary of that embrace, the world outside faded, leaving only the sweetness of their connection. Thunder cracked again, this time louder, drowning out the rest, the sound a vivid herald of both danger and freedom. Yet, in that moment of connection, there was also hope, a spark of light amidst the shadows, stirring within the depths of her despair and igniting a fierce resolve. As their lips finally parted, breathless, Laelani's thoughts flitted back to her choices, the seduction of escape, and the unavoidable storm yet to come. Desmond, she whispered, a mixture of resolve and longing coursing through her, will we be ready for whatever waits on the other side? Together, he promised, and in the power of that word, she felt a flicker of courage amidst the uncertainty, a light in the shadows that could guide her through the chaos ahead. Scene 82. Allies and Betrayers. The grand hall of Sinclair Manor soared upwards, its elegant chandeliers flickering, as if trembling in the wake of an unseen storm. Shadows stretched across polished marble floors, echoing the suffocating tension in the air. Laelani Sinclair stood near the expansive window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared out at the encroaching dusk. The soft hues of twilight blended into ominous shades, mirroring her rising anxiety and disappointment. She could hear the muted sounds of the city beyond, alive and vibrant, a stark contrast to the stillness that enveloped her heart. Why would you think I wouldn't find out? Desmond Carver's voice cut through the silence, low and dangerous, like the rumble of thunder. He stood at the entryway, shoulders squared and jaw clenched, a portrait of both frustration and longing. The flicker of candles glinted off his dark eyes, which caught hers, igniting old feelings even as they sparkled with hurt. I didn't want you to find out, Laelani replied, her voice taut with the weight of secrets. She turned to face him fully, the heat radiating from her skin as emotions collided within her. You were supposed to be on my side. Instead, you've turned against me, just like everyone else. Desmond stepped closer, closing the distance that seemed to buzz with the static of their past encounters. You trusted Angela. She sold you out to your husband, knowing full well he's been watching me. His frustration ignited, filling the space between them with palpable tension. Laelani swallowed, anger bubbling beneath her resolve. I thought she was my friend. I thought we all fought for the same thing. Her heart raced, and her breathing became shallow. I thought you and I were different, he interrupted, the word hanging in the air like an accusation. He raised an eyebrow, breathing deeply. Laelani, I'm trying to protect you. All of this, your husband, what he's planning, this isn't a game. The walls seemed to close in. As she moved to respond, the strained silence was shattered by the distant sound of a car horn, abrupt and angry. What plans? You only see the danger I'm in, never the danger you put yourself in. But you're in danger because of me, he exclaimed, voice rising. I didn't want to endanger you, yet here we are. His hands formed fists at his sides, shaking with controlled intensity. In that moment, Laelani felt her breath hitch. The weight of his words bore down on her as their eyes locked, each unspoken longing and regret igniting the space around them. Then tell me the truth, she breathed, her voice softening, the anger dissipating like mist. What do you truly feel? Desmond hesitated, his brow furrowing as vulnerability seeped into his posture. I feel like I'm losing you. Every moment we waste fighting against each other pulls you closer to him. His voice cracked slightly. There's no him or me, Desmond. It's only you and I, and the choices we make. The defiance in her voice hovered between solidarity and desperation. The shadows danced around them, as if echoing the battle within her heart. Just then, footsteps echoed from the corridor, and the figure of Dr. Malcolm Rivers appeared, gentle yet firm, eyes flicking between them with concern. "Laelani, I just received a message. Your husband is coming home early. Damn it!" Desmond cursed, though his tone was layered with urgency instead of anger. Laelani felt the color drain from her face. "What are we going to do?" "I need to get you out of here now," Desmond urged, yet his eyes shifted toward Malcolm, a silent communication passing between them. "Can you hold him off?" Malcolm nodded slowly. "I'll do my best, but we both know your husband will not be easily deterred." His gaze fell to Laelani, filled with sympathy. "You know the gravity of this, Laelani. Choose wisely." With a deep breath, Laelani shook her head. "I can't just run, not without standing my ground. I'll confront him." "No." Desmond's voice was firm, pulling her back from the precipice. "This isn't a confrontation, it's a death sentence." And in that moment, the enormity of their choices hung heavy in the air, a fragile thread of hope woven through the impending darkness. She found herself drawn to Desmond, longing to reach out to bridge the distance between their hearts, to carve out a sanctuary amidst the chaos. "Desmond," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with a kind of fiery determination. "Whatever happens, please, don't lose faith in me." He reached out, fingers brushing against hers, a spark igniting between them that could not be extinguished. "I won't, Laelani, even if the world falls apart." And as the shadows deepened, the noise of the outside world faded into insignificance, their future teetering on the edge of uncertainty. They held on to that fragile thread, even as the chaos began to encircle them. Scene 83. Beneath the mask. The opulence of the Sinclair drawing room shone like a gilded cage, the heavy velvet drapes drawing shadows across the dimly lit space. Desmond stood near the fireplace, flames flickering, casting a warm glow that emphasized the tension in the air. Laelani leaned against the mantel, her arms crossed tightly, as if shielding herself from the weight of their unspoken truths. "Do you ever think about what lies beneath our masks?" Laelani asked, her voice low yet charged. Desmond's gaze flicked to her, intensity brewing behind his dark eyes. He stepped forward, closing the remaining distance between them, an instinctual pull towards her chaos. "Often. But some truths are better left hidden." Laelani felt the heat radiating from his body, a steady warmth that made her heart race. She uncrossed her arms, the movement feeling almost defiant. "You don't truly believe that. You hide things, Desmond. We both do." Suddenly, a crash rang out from the adjoining room. Everyone in the house was on edge these days, secrets stirring like a restless tide. Laughter and clinking glass fell silent, replaced by a murmur of concern from the guests. "Shall we lay our secrets bare, then?" Desmond replied, the challenge in his tone echoing the urgency of the moment outside them. Without breaking eye contact, Laelani felt a stirring beneath her skin, as though the conversation had morphed into an erotic dance. "You know I've been suffocated by expectations. The only real freedom comes from connections. I thought you understood." His clenched jaw quivered slightly, a reaction she hadn't expected. "I understand more than you think. You're bound by a life you didn't choose, yet you wear it beautifully." His voice dropped an octave, thickening the air between them. A knot formed in her throat as the truth of his words resonated. Beneath it all, he saw her. And here was she, battling loyalty to her husband and a burgeoning desire for this man who had entered her life under the most complicated of circumstances. "How can we connect when we're haunted by our pasts?" she asked, taking a step toward him, the subtle scent of sandalwood blending with the crackling fire. Desmond hesitated, the weight of unreleased burdens pressing between them. "You don't know the lengths I would go to protect you, Laelani, but the shadows I tread in are dangerous." He raised a hand to brush a strand of hair behind her ear, the intimacy of the gesture igniting a spark. "Are you implying that I can't handle danger?" Her challenge lingered in the air, meshing desire with defiance. A shadow crossed Desmond's features, revealing the quiet storm beneath his composed facade. "You don't understand the nature of the danger, my lady." He stepped closer, their bodies nearly touching, hearts pounding that truth. Her breath faltered as the distance between them dissolved, the hum of tension vibrating across her skin. "Then let me understand," she whispered, leaning in, intent on tasting his truth. Before their lips met, a door swung open on the other side of the room, the sound slicing through the moment. In rushed Janelle and Miles, the lively couple holding glasses and laughter, utterly oblivious. "Did you hear that racket? I swear someone dropped the whole service." Janelle giggled, her voice piercing the intimacy like a sudden chill. Laelani recoiled slightly, her heart plummeting. "Not now," she mouthed silently to Desmond, a plea echoing in her desperate gaze. Miles ignored the tension gripping the air, tossing back his head with laughter. "I thought we were all here for secrets and scuffles. Where's the drama? Laelani, I thought you were going to spice things up." Desmond inhaled sharply, visibly restraining emotions that threatened to boil over into chaos. Stepping back, he masked his disappointment beneath a charming facade, yet his eyes betrayed an unresolved hunger. "Perhaps the drama will find us later," Laelani said, her voice spilling with a hint of seduction, "if we're determined enough." As the laughter continued to echo through the drawing room, Desmond's expression hardened slightly, an impenetrable mask slipping back into place. "Count on it," he murmured, a promise laced with danger, as he moved away to join the lively clamour. Within the flickering shadows and muffled laughter, the unsaid lingered, weaving their lives ever closer in a web of secrets and undeniable allure. Scene 84. The gathering storm. Crimson light spilled through the grand windows of the estate, casting a heat haze over the room where Laelani Sinclair paced, her fervent thoughts a storm more turbulent than any brewing outside. Desmond Carver leaned against the polished mahogany desk, arms crossed, every fibre of his being alight with unspoken tension. "What are we going to do about him?" Laelani's voice cut through, slicing the air as she stopped, one hand resting on the delicate lace of her collar, the other clenched into a fist. Desmond's jaw tightened visibly, the slight quiver in his hands betraying the unwavering calm he was trying to maintain. "We prepare," he said, his deep voice low and steady. Yet the undertones of urgency rippled beneath, a warning that pushed against the silence like a tide. "But preparation means conflict, Desmond. What if we don't make it out this time?" Her words trembled, breaking the resolve in her eyes as she searched his face, her mind swirling with 1,000 what-ifs. Desmond stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Their shared air crackled, charged and intimate. He leaned in slightly, the warmth of his body enveloping her as he whispered, "Then we fight, but not for just our lives, Laelani. We fight for each other." In that moment, his gaze was unyielding, a fierce intensity igniting something deep within her. She felt the air thicken, drawing them into a cosmic fold, their quiet chaos merging into something raw and beautiful. "Do you truly believe we can?" She hesitated, breath hitching as she examined the depths of his eyes, searching for the bravado that never seemed to waver. "Yes," he said, his voice a fiery promise grounding them both. "I believe in us." His fingers brushed against her arm, igniting a flash of warmth that shivered through her veins. Her heart raced, pounding like a drumbeat that urged her closer to him. The world around them faded, a kaleidoscope of doubts and societal expectations spiraling into shadow. She stepped forward, the dark temptation of their connection drawing her like a moth to flame. Desmond's breath quickened as Laelani moved within inches, her vibrant scent enveloping him, jasmine and sweet whispers of summer. "I can't," she started, but the words hung there, obstructed by the tension that charged the air between them. "You can," he insisted, his voice a quiet rasp now, impossibly close, laced with the gravity of their unspoken desires. "I'm married." The conflict struck her like a tempest, but inside, her heart betrayed her as it hungered for the promise of more. "And what has that marriage given you?" Desmond whispered, a challenge woven in the nonchalance of his smile that drew her in ever closer. "Stability," she replied, though it came out more like a question. Desmond raised an eyebrow, his lips curling at the corners. "Stability can be a gilded cage, my lady." His gaze darkened with the weight of his concealed truth. In this fragile moment, an invisible thread began to pull between them, electric, undeniable. Laelani leaned in, drawn by the weight of their shared craving, as the sound of their breathing filled the room, quickening the rhythm of their hearts. "What if?" But before she could finish, Desmond surged forward, crashing his lips against hers in one swift, fervent motion. The kiss ignited a conflagration, not only of longing, but also of desperation and hope. Her body responded instinctively, melting into him as if their souls had been entwined far longer than the shadowy corridors of this estate suggested. Every doubt, every fear faded into the background as she breathed him in. His hands wrapped around her waist, pulling her fiercely against him, anchoring her to the moment, to this intoxicating reality of stolen time. Laelani lost herself in it, just for a heartbeat, or two, or a lifetime. For a moment, they floated in silent reverie, but the heat of their world could not ignore the cold spectre of the reality outside. They pulled apart, breathless, gaze lingering, the weight of their mission looming once more. "What lies ahead?" Laelani began, her heart plummeting back to earth, but the fervor of their encounter painted a complex tapestry of hope and fear that, woven tightly, promised either beauty or destruction. Desmond brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his eyes unwavering. "We face it, together." A fragile smile broke amidst the storm brewing inside her, a glimpse of possibility surfacing against the shadows. "Together," she whispered, a promise forged in the flame of their connection, as beyond the windows, the clouds gathered for the impending chaos. Scene 85. Under pressure. The sun cast its final golden rays over the grand estate, illuminating the polished surfaces of the kitchen as Laelani Sinclair chopped vegetables for dinner. The rhythmic slicing of the knife echoed in the high-ceilinged room like a quiet heartbeat, underscoring the tension that hung heavily in the air. Each chop was deliberate, a momentary distraction from the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her mind. Desmond Carver, the enigmatic new butler, prepared a sauce on the stove, his back turned to her, yet feeling like a magnet always pulling her focus away from her tasks. "Are you even listening?" Laelani asked, though the question felt hollow as the sound of her voice mingled with the bubbling sauce.